The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liana Rodriguez. I'm the Communications Coordinator here at NALCAB. I would like to welcome everyone to our third social media webinar series on how to maximize and measure your Twitter campaign. With me here today is Laura Calderon. She is our Fair Housing Project Coordinator. She comes to us with over 15 years of experience in communications, media relations, research, and public policy, as well as advocacy in nonprofits and public sectors. NALCAB's mission is to build financial and real estate assets, as well as human and technology resources for Latino families, communities, and organizations. This webinar today is made possible with the generous support of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And just to give you some background, HUD awarded funding to NALCAB to lead a national fair housing media campaign to inform our communities and educate them on what fair housing discrimination is, what are their rights under the Fair Housing Discrimination Act, and how can they make that complaint if they've been a victim of fair housing discrimination. So we are working along with 8 of our member organizations, as well as 2 national partners who will be disseminating this information through TV, PSAs, radio spots, posters, flyers, etc. They will reach out also through their community outreach activities, such as workshops or local events. And a lot of it will also be held through social media experts, utilizing Facebook and Twitter as the primary platforms for this campaign. So throughout the webinar, you will hear reference, we make references back to the Fair Housing Media Campaign, but keep in mind that a lot of these strategies, tips, and tactics you can apply to any of your campaigns or promotions, initiatives that you have going on social media. So I will turn this over to Laura Calderon, who will lead the webinar for today.
All right, thank you so much, Ileana. I appreciate the introduction. All right, everyone, welcome, and thank you for being here today. Today's agenda is going to be looking at how you determine your Twitter goals and define your audience. We're going to look at the basics of using Twitter, and then we're going to look at ways to create compelling content so that we can maximize engagement. And then last of all, we're going to look at Twitter analytics so that we can figure out how to measure the results that you get from using Twitter. We're going to start with a real quick overview of Twitter's impact on, well, really the world. Twitter launched in 2006, and so basically it's just a little over 7 years old now, and it is the fastest growing social media network in the world. There are 500 million users, but there are 200 million active monthly users, and every day there are 400 million tweets sent out. Now, 60% of all Twitter users access Twitter by mobile phone. But generally speaking about social media and not just Twitter, the 2012 statistic tells us that 40% of all cell phone users in the United States are accessing social media networks from their mobile phones. African American and Hispanic young adults ages 18 to 29 are far more likely to use social networks from their phones than older white social network users. And not shown on the slide, but just an interesting factoid, the most retweeted message to date was President Obama's re-election, and that was retweeted over 800,000 times. Okay, a little bit more about Twitter users in the United States. The Pew Research Center's Pew Internet and American Life Project released a report based released it in August 2013 that showed 72% of online users use social media, and of those internet users, 18% use Twitter. Men and women are almost equal in their use of Twitter. Men come in at 18% and women at 17%. Young adults ages 18 to 29 are the largest users, 30%. And not shown here is that those ages, or those people ages 50 to 64 have more than doubled their use of Twitter from 6% in 2010 to 13% in 2013, making it the fastest growing group of users. Now, Hispanics are the highest Twitter users at 28%, African Americans follow at 27%. And just for you to know, Hispanics are twice as likely as whites, which come in at 14%, to participate on Twitter. Now let's look a little more closely at Twitter itself. Facebook is known for connecting you with friends and family. Twitter is different in that it is designed to connect you with interesting people and those who share your interests. In addition to being an online social networking service, Twitter is also considered a microblogging service. And it's a blog because it's basically a website where items are posted regularly, on a regular basis, and they're displayed in reverse chronological order. And it's considered a microblog because we're talking about 140 characters for Twitter messages. And these messages that are sent and read are called tweets. Think of Twitter as a place where you can share information as it happens and for connecting with others in real time. People who follow you or who are interested in the topic or comment or can comment as the conversation is happening on Twitter. It is happening in real time, which can make it interesting if you're describing an event or some breaking news that you're witnessing. On the other hand, because your comments are posted immediately, you can get in trouble if you don't think twice about what you say, so be careful with that. You can tweet all kinds of information, but basically we're talking about updates, breaking news, helpful information, and conversations with others. Now, Twitter is much more public than Facebook because its purpose is to share information with the public. Everybody can see your posts unless you protect your tweets, which you don't really want to do, but I'll explain that later. Registered users can read and post tweets, but unregistered users can only read them. If you're registered on Twitter, you can comment on anything that interests you on Twitter, and you don't have to be following that person. That's one of the biggest differences between Facebook and Twitter. And this just tells you how public Twitter is. Now, users can access Twitter through the Twitter website itself, through SMS, which is just a short message service, or in other words, a text message from a mobile phone, or from a mobile device app. Now, as far as apps go, there's an official Twitter app, but there are also many other apps that have been developed by third parties that will work as well for you. Now I'm going to talk about how to develop specific communication goals for Twitter. When you consider your Twitter strategy, your starting point should be your organization's overall communication or marketing goals. And these, of course, should be based on your organization's mission and goals. Your Twitter strategy will reflect how Twitter can help you accomplish those communication goals. For the first step in developing your Twitter strategy, you would identify and list out all of your communication goals. Now, some examples of common goals for nonprofits are to increase your overall presence and awareness, attract more volunteers, and increase your donations. Your second step would be to identify and understand your target audience. You're going to set objectives, so think about who you'll need to interact with in order to accomplish these objectives. The third step is to define your Twitter objectives. Your objectives are what you plan to accomplish on Twitter in support of your organization's goals. Twitter objectives will vary from one organization to another since every organization has different goals. Now, your fourth step would be to choose your tactics. Here you create a plan of tactics that will reach and resonate with your target audience in order to help you reach your Twitter goals. And we're going to look at each of these individually and try to flesh them out a little bit. Okay, first step, know your organization's overall communication or marketing goals. Every communications or marketing activity you perform, from tweeting and texting to fundraising, should be done with the purpose of accomplishing your organization's end goals. For your first step in developing your Twitter communication strategy, you're going to identify and list your overall goals. I mentioned before that some of the most common goals for nonprofits are to increase overall presence and awareness of your organization and mission, increase the number of volunteers, and increase donations. These goals answer the question, what do we want to accomplish with our overall communications or marketing strategy? We're going to use this first goal as our working example as we walk through the 4 steps to developing our Twitter goals. Now we're going to move on to the second step in determining your Twitter goals, identifying and understanding your audience. Typically, some type of research is done to figure out who the audience is. For our Fair Housing campaign, the Fair Housing Act of 1968 spells that out for us. As you can see here, there are 7 protected classes under the Act. The Act also includes all sectors of the residential housing industry, like mortgage bankers, leasing and rental agents, and more, for being responsible that discrimination doesn't occur. So these groups compose the core of our audiences for the Fair Housing campaign. But let's take a quick look at what to do when you don't have your audience spelled out for you. All right, if you have a general communications or marketing plan, you probably have already defined your target audience. And if you were on our Facebook webinar earlier this month, you heard me speak at some length on this. I'm going to quickly review these steps for a general campaign and comment on them from the perspective of developing your Twitter audience. Okay, you're going to start by brainstorming a picture of your audience characteristics. Is this a single mom with children living in an inner city rental apartment making less than $25,000 a year? Is it an elderly couple living on a fixed income, caring for grandchildren and experiencing financial difficulties? Or maybe an unemployed immigrant with limited English speaking abilities, seeking employment and affordable housing? Now, each of these is different, and their details will guide you in figuring out how to reach them. For Twitter, this may mean that you will want to follow other agencies in your area that provide services to these individuals, like employment and training groups, organizations that help immigrants get on their feet, senior services organizations, and so on. Now, by following them, they will receive your tweets regarding your programs, and in this case, the Fair Housing campaign. Now, each of the people I just described is dealing with a pressing issue. Whatever that issue is, it's your opportunity to address it in your campaign by crafting a message that hits home to them. Again, for Twitter purposes, understanding their issues can point you to follow other service agencies on Twitter that can retweet your messages to their followers. Knowing where your target audience gets their information from is critical. Do they read the local newspaper or the church or neighborhood association newsletter? Is there a popular Spanish language newspaper or radio station that fits your demographic? Latinos and African Americans are huge internet users, especially via mobile phones, and they are on Twitter. Knowing that has implications for your communication strategy. Now, it's very likely that media such as newspapers or radio stations are on Twitter, so be sure that you're following them. Now, when you want people to take advantage of your organization's services, they want to know what's in it for them. Will this make life better for me? So your campaign needs to focus on the benefits of your programs or services and less on the features or mechanics of your program. When you craft a Twitter message, you only have 140 characters, so when possible, be sure to speak to your audience from this perspective. Now, as nonprofits, we serve communities that are underserved or that are vulnerable because they're in need. They have a strong sense of skepticism and an instinct to be wary. So when we communicate with them, we have to be aware of this. Most of you are well established in your communities and are seen as gatekeepers, so this isn't a big problem, but it's something that you always have to keep in mind when you communicate with them. Now, as far as Twitter is concerned, the implication here is to have a good, descriptive, and complete Twitter profile, because in the Twitterverse, when you don't, that means scam, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later on. The other implication is that you can create positive engagement with someone who posts on your page when you respond to them by thanking them for their comment or answering their question. That responsiveness contributes to developing trust in your organization. Now, the last point, who does your audience trust? Community-based nonprofits have an advantage here, but most of the time you can't do it alone, so partnering with trusted groups or individuals is important to your campaign success. In some communities, it's a church or a respected community leader. Having them on your side strengthens the position you already hold in your community. Again, for Twitter purposes, We want these types of people engaged with our mission. And for the Fair Housing Campaign, you want to follow them and hope that they will follow you back. The fair housing information you're putting out there is a public service to the community. Consider what trusted individuals or groups might like to be seen retweeting information that is a public service. Maybe a labor union, a neighborhood organization, a church leader, or a trusted elected official. You can find these folks on Twitter and have them work with you to retweet. All right, now we've talked about knowing your communication goals, identifying your audience, and now let's move on to step 3, defining our Twitter objectives. All right, your objectives are what you plan to accomplish with Twitter in support of your organization's goals. Earlier I mentioned 3 possible communication goals. I'm going to use goal number 1 as our example. Increase the overall presence and awareness of your organization and mission. And then we're going to look at some possible Twitter-related objectives for that goal. Now for goal 1, here are 3 possible objectives. They reinforce goal 1 and take into account the way a successful Twitter user operates. And let's look at each objective. All right, the first one is build a Twitter following, which means grow Twitter followers to 100 in 3 months. Obviously, you want followers because they are the recipients of your tweets, and the whole idea is to communicate and engage, and you can't do that without followers. Followers also help you get your message out about your organization. So this is pretty obvious, but the big question is, how do I get followers? And we'll talk about that later in the presentation. Next, you want to reinforce your Twitter messages, which means get 3 retweets per week. I chose 3, but you can choose any number that you think works for you. Keep this in mind as we talk later on about strategies to get followers and to get retweets, so you can set a realistic objective for yourself. Now, why are tweets or retweets important? We want retweets because this is an indicator that your tweets are meaningful and engaging to your followers to the point that they pass them on or retweet them to others. Your third objective, drive traffic to your website. This means get 5 click-throughs to your website per week. What this means is that your tweets will have information like a link to your website that causes the person looking at your Twitter page to click through to your website. Click-throughs are important because it tells you that the user was interested in what you had to say, they wanted more, and they went to your website. Now, I'm not going to cover the other goals in detail, but I think that these examples give you an idea of how you can develop objectives. The ideas reflected in these objectives, building your following, retweets, and click-throughs, those are pretty standard objectives for Twitter. There are other measures of success, but these are basic. As you craft your objectives, make sure that they're measurable, that they're obtainable, and they're set within a specific time frame. All of these objectives can be measured, and we'll cover that later in the presentation. Okay, now we're moving on to our tactics. The next step here is to create a plan of tactics that will resonate with your Twitter audience and help you accomplish your Twitter objectives. Tactics are the specific activities that you're going to use to reach your objectives. This is where you get very specific. You have already developed your Twitter objectives. Now for each one, begin brainstorming tactics that could help accomplish that particular objective. Don't overwhelm yourself with too many tactics. Develop a reasonable number that can be carried out. Edit and refine your list of tactics over time, and then eliminate those that don't seem to have any effect. The tactics on this page and the following slides are just examples of how to achieve your Twitter objectives and ultimately your communication goals. But we're going to look at other strategies later in the presentation. All right, so let's look at tactics for our objective, increase Twitter followers. All right, the first tactic is you want to follow relevant users like existing supporters, members of your target audience, and other nonprofits. And we want to do this because we have something in common with them, and that increases the chances of interacting with them and having them help us get our information out to others in the network, their network. The next tactic is tweet links to third-party articles that are relevant to your target audience. When we find articles or helpful hints or other types of information that would be of interest to our target audience, we want to share that information. Doing this places you in the position of being helpful, knowledgeable, and it enhances your credibility with your audience. Next thing is you want to use relevant hashtags to gain the attention of your audience. And we're going to talk much more about hashtags later. They basically help people search for information that Twitter users put out on Twitter. For now, remember that hashtags help you increase Twitter followers, and this will become a lot clearer later. The next thing you want to do in terms of a tactic is you want to retweet others' user content. You are on Twitter and you find a post by someone else that you think your audience would like. You can press the retweet button and send it out to your followers instantly. This has the same effect as when you tweet out links to the third-party articles that I mentioned. Plus, the person who originated the tweet is notified, and they may end up following you and ultimately increasing your network. Okay, your next objective here is to get more retweets. Now let's look at your tactics. One of the things that you want to do is ask questions. Asking questions to start conversations are a huge social media strategy for engagement. So think about using this. Asking questions tends to generate retweets, so this enforces your objective of getting retweets. Now, just an aside for our fair housing partners, asking questions under our fair housing campaign poses a problem for HUD. Anytime we ask questions, that constitutes a survey, and all kinds of legal implications kick in. So for our fair housing campaign, asking questions is not something that we're doing. But in general, it's a huge social media strategy and one that is very useful that starts conversations. So we do need to keep this in mind for other things besides the fair housing campaign. Okay, another tactic is that we want to tweet quotes. There's a lot of research out there that has shown that Twitter users and Facebook users love quotes. And perhaps that's because they communicate very profound information in a pretty short format. But either way, good quotes generate retweets, and that's what we want. So think about that piece of it. You also want to share pictures and videos. Pictures and videos are like quotes. Social media users love pictures and videos, and they tend to be retweeted many times over. All right, our next objective is to drive traffic to the website. So what are the tactics that we're going to use here? Well, I think that this is pretty self-explanatory. You want to drive traffic to your website for the obvious reasons. To have your user to get to know you better, you want them to come in contact with that donate button that you probably have on your website or that volunteer here button that you have, and you get them from Twitter to your website by some of these tactics. First, you have to share your links to articles or stories on your website. You also want to share links to news articles and that you may have posted on your website. And then you can also post an interesting photo and give it a caption that causes them to go to your website. So the idea here is you don't totally describe what's happening in this interesting photo, but you get them to click onto your website to find out more about what's going on. So now let's move on to learning more about how to use Twitter. But first we're going to have a quick poll. We're going to take a minute, and we really want to just hear what our audience does in terms of using Twitter. So when it comes to using Twitter, we don't. We use Twitter, we use Twitter but without a plan or irregularly, or we use Twitter as an important part of our communication efforts. So can you please answer this? Okay, looks like we've got answers coming in. In the meantime, while we're doing that, don't forget that on Thursday, October 3, we have our last webinar in this series, How to Optimize Your Website, How to Be Smartphone Friendly. All right, let's see, how are we doing, David? Okay, we're waiting for answers to come in. Okay, so, all right, well, 33% of our audience says that they don't use Twitter. 56%, I'm sorry, I can't see here. 58% says we use Twitter, but without a plan or irregularly. Okay, well, hopefully we'll fix that today. And then 8% says we use Twitter as an important part of our communications efforts. Okay, well, 8%, that's excellent. I'm glad to hear that. All right. All right, are we back on? Okay, all right, here we go. Okay, just a reminder there about our next webinar again. Okay, Twitter basics. Now we're going to get into the details of Twitter. And we just did a poll, but just so that you know, NALCAB did do a website audit of its members in July to see who was on Facebook and who was on Twitter. 81% were using Facebook, but only 49% were using Twitter, and 17% were not using either one. So I'm going to assume that some of those folks in the 49% and the 17% are on this webinar with us. And so we're going to begin with the basics to get you moving on Twitter. All right. Creating a Twitter account really is very simple. And here are some instructions found in the help section of Twitter. If you look down here, this is really what you will see when you first go to, not the help section, but the Twitter homepage. What you're going to see is a box right down here on the right-hand side. It says use Twitter, sign up. And so basically all you need to do is enter your name, your email address, and then you select a password. And that's it. Once you do that, you are signed up for a Twitter account. But there's still some things that you have to do to make your account more effective. Okay, so once you sign up, Twitter is going to walk you through completing your profile. And having a good profile is critical to your Twitter success because it defines who you are and it legitimizes you. Plus, you want to raise awareness of your organization, and this is one way to do it on Twitter. Okay, the first thing you need to remember is don't be a Twitter egg. Include an avatar. In this case, your logo most likely. And Twitter gives you an opportunity to add a photo or some image that represents you, and that would be your avatar. And when you don't add an image, it defaults to an egg shape, and so that's why I say you don't want to be a Twitter egg. Twitter users see the egg as not being a serious Twitter user and possibly as a spammer. So get that done quickly. It's been a few years since this 2009 study, but I'm sure it still holds true today, and that is that having no avatar decreases your followers by up to 80%. So it's very important that you get your photo or that logo in there very quickly. The next thing you want to be sure to do is include your organizational bio. This time you have 160 words instead of the Twitter maximum, which is 140. Now, if a potential follower can't get some sense of what you are about, they're not going to follow you. So that organizational bio becomes very important. That same 2009 study found that having a bio can get you up to 8 times as many followers. Be sure that you include your website link. Having that website link allows potential followers to learn more about you, and it helps them decide if they want to follow you. Again, it's another way of legitimizing that you're a serious Twitter user. All right, now, just like Facebook, you can add a cover photo at the top of your page, and you do this in your settings and then under the Design tab. And we'll go through that in just a minute. I've included an article also on how to do this on the resource slide. And you will have the opportunity to protect your tweets when you're setting up your profile. This means that your tweets will be private conversations only with people that you know. Protecting them goes completely against what Twitter is all about, which is to have open public conversations, and it really serves no purpose for your organization, so I recommend that you not protect your tweets. So now let's just look at some Twitter home pages and see how all of this actually fleshes out. Okay, here you have the Twitter page that belongs to the Latino Economic Development Center, or LEDC. This is the cover photo that I mentioned. This is a relatively new piece to Twitter. And when I mentioned the avatar or your logo, this is where it would go right in here. All right, so you can use that cover photo to, make a statement about the work that you do, something very compelling that lets people know what your organization is all about. Here, LEDC, on their left-hand side, they have a custom background with their logo again. They also have their tagline here, and they've got some contact information here as well. And just let me point out to you that right here, where my cursor is, at LEDC Metro, that is their username for Twitter. My page is not interactive, but if it was, this link would be live. So if I'm coming onto their page, I clicked here, I would go onto their website. Okay, so we're going to look at another example. Okay, here's NALCAB's Twitter page. Now their visual approach is a little bit different. Here their spotlight is on their colorful logo, and their background is dark so that their logo and this Twitter feed here really stands out. Their mission statement is still prominent up here under their logo, and you see their location here as well. And again, their website address, which on the real Twitter page, it's live and you can click through to their website. So this is just another approach to show you what's possible. Now let's get get deeper into how Twitter works. And before we actually, in order to do that, I wanted to just review some of the Twitter vocabulary, because that is one of the things that sets Twitter apart from the other social media, is that they have a very unique vocabulary that I think sometimes is intimidating to new users. So let's start with that. Okay, I think by now you probably know a tweet is a real-time post of 140 characters or less. A following means that these are the profiles that you follow to receive their tweets. And when I say profiles, I mean people or organizations. Followers, these are the profiles that you follow so that you receive your tweets. Now, follower is a Twitter user who subscribes to your account so that he or she can see all of your posts and updates on your own page. Generally, if you follow another user, that user follows you back, but that doesn't always happen. Okay, retweets. A retweet is when you see a tweet from someone else that interests you and you send it out or repost it. A retweet is simply sharing an original post by another user on his or her page. A reply. Sometimes you'll see that written as @reply, the @ symbol, or just simply reply. And I say you see that. If you do any research to follow up on this webinar, to find out more about Twitter, they're referred to in the same manner. @reply means reply. Same thing with the @mention below, and then just a simple word of mention. Okay, let's go back to reply. Okay, an @reply is any update that's posted by clicking the reply button on a tweet. It's a response to another user, usually to answer a question or in reaction to an idea that's been posted. Any tweet that is an @reply to you begins with your username and will show up in your mentions tab on the Connect page. Right now that probably doesn't mean a lot to you, but we're going to look at a page and this will all come clear in just a second. To reply, you would type in the @ symbol followed by the username and then follow with your message. The username is the first thing in your tweet when you're replying. The @reply will appear in the public area of your timeline for your network to see. And let's move on to mention. Mention is any Twitter update that contains @username anywhere in the body of the tweet. Twitter collects these messages as well as your replies in the Mentions tab from your Connect page. And again, we'll look at that in a second. A mention is not necessarily a direct response to another user and is mostly used as an FYI. And it's placed anywhere in the body of the tweet, just not at the beginning. Now, if you're confused, I don't blame you, but also I want to just let you know, don't worry, we're going to cover this again. The differences between a reply and a mention, I think, are one of the more confusing aspects of Twitter, And like I said, we'll cover that, and I think that you will understand what we mean by all of this. All right, a direct message or a DM, a private tweet only to somebody that you follow and who follows you. And as I mentioned before, I believe I've mentioned it before, a private tweet is only seen by the people that it's directed towards. You can only receive a direct message from users that you follow, and limit for direct messages is still 140 characters. And when you do have a direct message from somebody, the me icon, and that's the icon at the top of your Twitter page, it looks like a little head, it'll have a blue glow under it, and that means that somebody has sent you a direct message. Okay, hashtag. A hashtag at the beginning of a word or phrase creates a tag and allows you to search for words or phrases like hashtag fair housing or hashtag housing discrimination. Tweets featuring that hashtag phrase will all be pulled into one communal thread. Hashtags help you find others interested in a topic, and I'm going to talk about hashtags in much more detail in just a second. Okay, now let's understand the Twitter layout. Okay, on the right-hand side, here where it says tweets, that's a stream of tweets or the feed from all of the people that you follow. A feed is a list of updates or tweets that are constantly being updated and are arranged in chronological order, with the most recently updated ones at the top. All right, number one here, the connect button. If you click this, you see two tabs, the interactions and the mentions. First, let's cover interactions. This is a timeline that shows you how others have been interacting with you on Twitter. It will show you when someone marks your tweet as a favorite, mentions your username, follows you, or retweets your content. It's basically like your Twitter inbox. Anyone who has said something to you directly will appear in your connect area. Now we're going to talk about mentions. That's the other piece that shows up when you click the connect button. When another user includes your username preceded by the @ symbol in a tweet, we call it a mention. Your mentions tab collects these tweets that mention you by your username so that you can keep track of conversations others are having with you. All right, now we're going to look at number 2 here. View my profile page. Clicking on the link will take you to your profile page. This is where you set up your profile photo, your bio, and all of your other profile information. It also has a list of all of your tweets plus a listing of your following and your followers. All right, we're going to move on to number 3 here. And this is pretty important because this is the box where you write your tweet. To post your own tweet, you click the Compose Tweet button here, and you can link to images, videos, or web URLs in your message, and you can add a location if you want to show users where you are. All right, number 4. If you're looking for people to follow, this little link will pull similar profiles of your current following. You can look through and pick new people to follow if their bio seems interesting to you. If you're brand new to Twitter, that might be something to look at. It might help you figure out who to follow. All right, number 5. All right, this is kind of interesting, but frankly, for my personal use on Twitter, it does not really help me a whole lot. But it may be interesting to you. On Twitter, as you know, hashtags are the big thing. You'll recall that people use this in front of a word with no space to categorize their tweets. The trends box points to hashtags that are trending. In other words, what's popular on Twitter right now. If you click on the hashtag, it will show you all of the tweets with that keyword. If you want to get more followers, you can join in and tweet something with that hashtag. Like I said, I don't really use that very much because usually the topics that are trending are not of much interest to me, but you know, it's important to know what it all means. And it's kind of interesting to watch sometimes to see what's going on in the Twitterverse. Okay, number 6, the search box. Here you can search for keywords or someone's name, and of course you can enter a phrase preceded by the hashtag in order to find conversations that are going on that you're interested in. Number 7, this right here is your Twitter handle. Your Twitter handle or your name on Twitter is always preceded by the @ sign. And so next to each person's tweet, you'll always see that Twitter handle. All right, moving on to number 8. This is a link that someone has pasted in. If you click on that link, it's going to take you to another site outside of Twitter. Number 9. This indicates here, retweeted by John Stapleton. So what that means is that someone that you follow took another person's tweet and retweeted. And there is a button that you can press if you see something that you want to retweet. And we'll see that later. All right, number 10. Here's an example of how someone who spoke directly to another person in their tweet, how that shows up. It will show up in blue when you speak directly to someone. I just wanted to point that out to you. All right. Number 11. In this tweet, there's a hashtag. These also show up in blue, and if you click on it, it's going to drop down a menu, or something like a menu. It's going to drop down and show you every tweet that used that particular keyword. Number 12, the View Summary. The View Summary button is a quick way to examine the tweet without having to go to another page. If someone tweets out, hey, check my blog, and then paste a link, you can hit View Summary, and it's going to give you a quick snapshot of the website. If you like what you see, you can click on the link and go there. Sometimes it won't say View Summary, but it'll say Expand or View Conversation. When you see a tweet where one person is talking to another, you can hit that button and see what the whole conversation was about. Okay, now here's a tweet up on top that's asking a question, and below are some of the responses that the question sparked. Normally, you would not see all of the conversation to begin with. You would have to click the Expand button, like the one down here. Here on this particular question, the Expand button has already been clicked, and so you see all of the conversation, all of the responses that follow the question. If I were to click on Collapse, the conversation here would disappear, and instead you would see Expand. It would look like something like this one here. Notice all the options next to Collapse. You can reply, you can click the retweet button like I mentioned earlier, and if you like the tweet, you can retweet it, and that means it would show up to all of your followers. You can also click on the favorite, and this is just like the like button on Facebook, so if you like this, you can click favorite. And then the More button. The More button, if you click on this, you will have the option of embedding the tweet directly onto your blog or emailing it to someone else. Okay, now there are some pieces to Twitter that are stumbling blocks and other pieces that make life much easier if you know about them. And I wanted to take some time to go over these quickly here. All right, you can join the conversation on Twitter by replying to others and by mentioning them in your own tweets. But these terms are some of the more confusing aspects of Twitter because they both use the @ symbol coupled with the user's name. But the main difference here is the location of the @username. Okay, a reply. Let's start with that. An @reply is any update that's posted by clicking the reply button on a tweet. The message begins with @username. This location designates it as a reply to another user. So to reply, you type in the @ symbol followed by the username. Let's say you want to talk to NALCAB or reply to NALCAB, and you would use the @ symbol and then NALCAB follows that. So you would put @NALCAB and then follow directly with your message. The @reply appears in the public area of your timeline for your network to see. The mention button. A mention is not necessarily a direct response to another tweet. It's mostly seen as an FYI. and it's placed somewhere in the tweet, usually at the end, but definitely not at the beginning, because if you put it at the beginning, then that's a reply. So any tweet that contains your username, whether it's a reply or a mention, will appear in your Mentions tab on the Connect page. If you mention more than one username in your tweet, these people will all see the tweet in their own Mentions tab. So I hope that this gives you some sense of the difference between an @reply and an @mention. Basically, the difference is the location. If you want to reply, you put that at the very, very beginning of your tweet message. If you want to use it as an @mention, just to give someone an FYI that you're tweeting, you would put that somewhere, excuse me, somewhere else in your tweet, usually at the end, but again, definitely not at the beginning. So pretty simple difference, but also very confusing. It's all about the location here. Okay, hashtags. Let's define hashtags again. Hashtags mark keywords or topics in tweets. They're composed of a single word or phrase that begin with the hashtag symbol with no spaces or punctuation. Clicking on a hashtag will lead you to a search featuring tweets with that same hashtag phrase. It will either create or lead you to an online community that's conversing around the topic. A hashtag is shorthand for this post is about whatever your topic is. And it connects different people tweeting about the same thing to view and react to each other's tweets. So when do you use a hashtag? Conversations collect around hashtags. If you want to start a conversation, you introduce a hashtag. If you want to join a conversation that's already happening on Twitter, you search for the hashtag that's being used. Tweeting with the right hashtag is the main way to send your message, not just to your followers, but to everyone else who's tuned into that conversation. All right, when you use hashtags, one of the things that you want to do is try to stick to one hashtag. They're most powerful when you use them sparingly. More than two in a tweet is considered overkill, and you only need to tag the most important word that represents the theme of your tweet. If you use more than one or two hashtags in a tweet, place the rest at the end. Otherwise, they're very distracting to the user. Remember, they count as part of your 140 characters. All right, choose the obvious hashtag when you're searching or creating one. Most of the time, the best hashtag is the most obvious one. And when I say hashtag, what I'm talking about is really the phrase that follows the hashtag mark. No official process for creating a hashtag. You just type it into your tweet. But a good hashtag needs to be descriptive, which means that your choice of hashtag should make sense for what you're trying to accomplish, whether that's to generate buzz for an event or you're collecting opinions on a topic. It should be short. And remember that that hashtag is part of your 140 character allocation for every tweet, so you want to conserve characters as much as possible. Plus, you want to make sure that it's easy to remember. You also want your hashtag phrase to be unique. Make sure to search each hashtag to make sure it's not taken by someone else. Search for your hashtag on Twitter or hashtag.org, and that is on your resource page if you want to check out hashtag.org. Now, a hashtag is only as good as the use that it gets, so you need to get the word out to your audiences, and you can do this by Twitter, obviously. You can let folks on Facebook know that you have a hashtag out there. You can add it to your PowerPoint presentations. You can email it in your newsletters and include it on your print materials. And the other thing is you need to be sure to track the responses or your results to your hashtag. And you can do a daily search for your hashtag to see who's using it and what they're saying. If you find that the activity is starting to slow down, it might be time for you to send out another reminder that you have a hashtag out there and that you're trying to keep your conversation going. So here's a partial review of results for a hashtag search. Here the phrase was hashtag Latino Americans. And what you see are the various tweets that have included the hashtag Latino Americans. All right, here's an infographic that shows what a tweet looks like when you're on the receiving end. Let's translate this tweet. This tweet is from the New York Times, And we know that because of the @ symbol in front of the name here. The basic message is follow the New York Times Theater for live coverage of tonight's Tony Awards, starting soon. And here's a hashtag in front of Tony Awards to create a searchable phrase for people that would be interested in the Tony Awards. Then after the phrase here, you've got the starting soon, and beyond that you see a shortened URL or web address that takes you to another site. In this case, it's probably a site with more information on the Tony Awards. And I'm guessing that the URL would take you to the site that belongs to the New York Times in an effort to drive traffic to its site. Here it tells you that there's a hashtag, a mention right here. You've got the username, as I pointed out before. Here, the short URL using the custom branded URL shortener. And what that means, custom branded, is that sometimes you see these and it'll say bit.ly or ow.li. Here, NYTI is a custom shortened URL because it really does refer to New York Times. So that's kind of nice because it gives you a sense of where you might be going if you click on this. Here you can interact with the tweet, as I mentioned to you earlier, and of course there's that expand button that I talked about earlier. You expand it and you can see the replies and the retweets on the same page. All right, I mentioned that there are some features to Twitter that can make life a little bit easier, and a Twitter list is one of those. Twitter lists are the Twitter's version of the groups feature that you see on Yahoo or Google Mail. And I've included it here because, like I said, it's a pretty useful tool. Basically, it creates a venue for users to organize who they're following on Twitter according to the user's criteria. For example, if you want to classify who you're following according to their industry, you can create a list and assign users to be under one of these lists so that one click will bring you all the posts made by these users in one thread. The list titles or the names are up to you, so you can make them as descriptive as you want. And you can add or remove members of the list anytime you want. So why should you create a list? Well, there are several reasons why you want to do that on Twitter. The first one is to create a group. Reading everyone's posts in a single timeline can be confusing and can break up your train of thought on a certain subject. By creating a group, you can easily see what specific people are talking about at a certain time and make sure that the conversation or thought is continuous. You can create a group based on your family members, a group of friends, people in your community, or people that are in a particular industry. Another reason is that to follow those who are not on your follow list. On your timeline, you see not just the tweets of your users that you follow, but also tweets of users. You can create a Twitter list that allows you to view posts made by others without necessarily having to follow them. And sometimes that might be of interest to you. The third reason is that you can group according to your interests. This allows you to bring all posts and users from the same industry under one thread. Lists like these will allow you to view all updates on similar subjects without having to jump from the home pages of one user to another. Okay, by now I hope you have some sense of how Twitter works and your confidence is building if you're not familiar with Twitter. So let's talk about content and how to create it. All right, in many ways developing Twitter content is just like developing content for Facebook or some other social media channel. But you obviously have some challenges because of the character limit and because it's real time. So here's some basic mechanics for developing content. First, use a human voice. Keep it conversational, even though we all have a serious mission. Tweets should sound as if a person and not an institution wrote them. Bland-sounding tweets are generally ignored, so let your personality come through. You want to keep your tweets short. They're limited to 140 characters, but there's no magical length for a tweet. But we know that our research tells us that tweets shorter than 100 characters get a 17% higher engagement rate. Plus, and this is important, when you post a tweet and you use all 140 characters or close to it, it makes it harder to retweet. Retweeting does not give you more characters, so that means if you want to retweet your message, you will have no room in the retweet to say anything because your original tweet used up all of those characters. So the rule of thumb here for leaving space for retweets is 110 to 120 characters. Okay, you want to make it real time because that's the nature of Twitter. Timing matters, especially for breaking news or live tweets. But what about for everything else? Well, the short answer is it really depends on the content of your tweet, your objectives, and your audience. The best way to optimize the timing of your tweets is to test and learn. And remember to keep your tweets prompt and timely, which is a crucial element for Twitter success. You want to tweet often and you want to do it on schedule. Just like the timing. Tweet frequency depends on a number of variables such as your audience, purpose, and your business objectives. That said, a good basic rule is between 3 to 5 tweets per day. You may want to try tweeting a couple of times a day to see how your audience reacts and then adjust as necessary. Some of my research shows that some people suggest as many as 5 to 10 tweets a day, but again, that just depends on you, the capabilities for your office, so it's an experiment, it's a work in progress. All right, creating frequent and compelling content for Twitter takes a lot of work, and so here's some best practices for creating that compelling content. First, think about what content resonates with your followers and what makes them share content. Generally, it's information that's funny or entertaining, helpful, newsworthy, or inspiring. So when you write a tweet, imagine how your followers are going to use it. How will it help them? Is it funny or entertaining? Is it helpful, newsworthy, or inspiring? Next, be sure that you include links, pictures, and videos. On Twitter, there's a pattern. The most retweeted content tends to contain links, pictures, videos, or quotes. Now, some links to consider: newsworthy events that people are already talking about, and you can mention these and how they relate to your cause. You can link to interesting items about your partners or service sector. Now, photos. Photos are important just like any other social media channel. They get twice the response. You can also share an inspirational quote, and Twitter users love inspirational quotes. Just keep it relevant and don't overdo it. Also, consider the 60-30-10 rule. This is a rule that's promoted by Social Bright, a great social media resource for nonprofits. And they say that your tweets should break out 60% retweets and pointers to promote information from other users or sites, 30% conversation and responses, and 10% announcements and events. The idea being that if all you ever talk about is yourself, after a while your people will lose, the followers rather, will lose interest. 60% sounds high, but remember that retweets and pointing others to other users and sites opens up opportunity for engagement. The idea here is that variety is key to keeping engaged followers. Photos, videos, links to newsworthy events and how they relate to your cause, perhaps live tweeting from your event as it's happening by highlighting the arrival of a recognized official or a respected community leader, tweeting out the tip of the day. These are all ideas to give you some sense of what's possible. And so on this next slide, I just really wanted to show you a NALCAB post that included a photo. Here we've got a new staff member, and so we've posted their picture on Twitter. So now you know that you need to keep an eye out for good information that you might be able to use on Twitter. And here are some ways to help you find that content. First of all, follow your interests. Once you've established an account on Twitter, you can begin to follow others that are interesting to you or to your organization. This is a good way to discover compelling content and inspire ideas for your own tweets. And you can always retweet their information. Be strategic when you do this. Follow and interact with influencers in your sector. You can use the search function on Twitter's site to help find people in your sector or your geographic region. Also, be sure to set up Google alerts to find content related to your organization's mission. Instead of spending hours searching and digging online for articles, take the easy way out and set up Google alerts. This is a system through which Google will send you links to content related to topics of your choice. You can follow users who post content relevant to your organization. The trick here is to figure out the words or phrases that you want Google to watch out for. You don't want them too general, or you'll get overloaded with information that's useless, but you don't want it so specific that you get nothing. Experiment. What worked for me was being too general at first. Then I saw what I was getting, and I was able to change my search phrases to be more precise. The other thing that you can do is you can sign up for newsletters or newsfeed services from related organizations that send daily roundups of their activities. So just some ideas here to help you find content. Now let's review some very specific content ideas. Okay, here are just a listing of ideas to help you develop content for your Twitter account. You can celebrate your supporters, your donors, and advocates that enable you to do great things in your community. You can share their impact via Twitter. I've already mentioned the power of quotes, but here it is again. You can share stories about those that you serve. This is a great way to spark interest in your mission and the work that your organization does on a daily basis. Sometimes this can be a descriptive photo or a video. You can engage other Twitter users in conversation by using replies and mentions. And basically what I'm saying here is to respond to posts. This is one way of developing content. Consider focusing on one topic for a day or a week. This can tie into an event or a special date like an anniversary, and try to combine your updates and, with hashtags. You can repackage good information or stories. When you find a good story or report to share, write a couple of different tweets summarizing the key points instead of just one, so you can really stretch out a good story that way. Retweet information shared by others. Along the same lines, retweet content shared by others that's relevant to your mission. Retweeting is a great way to share helpful content without taking a lot of your time. It also notifies the account that you retweeted, increasing the likelihood that they're going to check you out. All right, Twitter happens in real time, but that doesn't mean that you can't plan ahead. You can make a calendar of your important upcoming events, your program launch, perhaps a holiday or other seasonal events, and think about how you can incorporate them into your tweets. Here's a sample calendar that can help you develop something that works for you. So basically what a content calendar is just a plan that gives you some framework so that you know what's going to happen on your Twitter account from one day to the next. Okay, here's some Twitter tips. Use URL shorteners, and you've probably seen these before, bit.ly, the Google, the Owly, and tinyURL. This means, when you see these, this means that a web address has been shortened. If you have a link that you want to include in a tweet, you may want to shorten it to conserve your 140 calendars. This is where the URL shorteners come in. But also know that Twitter will do this for you automatically. Just paste a link of any link into the tweet box, and it will automatically be shortened to fit the 140 character limit. Also, another Twitter tip is to be sure to use Twitter Analytics, and we're going to go over that in a minute. But there are other free ways to measure, and I'm going to outline those in a second. And just a reminder, leave room for retweets, 110 to 120 characters. And be aware of scam Twitter accounts. The way you do this is to be wary of links from strangers. These types of accounts will usually favorite you. They have no tweets, no photo or bio, only a few followers, and they come from an unknown person. So this gives you also a sense of why it's so important for you to have a photo and a bio on your own Twitter account. Okay, now it's time to start talking a little bit about analytics. Now, if you were on the Facebook webinar, you know that getting analytics is really all about knowing where to find them. It doesn't involve a calculator or math, but it does involve reading charts and graphs. And the good news is that Twitter makes this pretty easy. Let's start by looking at what our fair housing partners need to be tracking when we get into Twitter analytics. All right, fair housing partners, you've probably seen this format before. This is going to be used to document the progress on the social media campaign. And in particular, the form we're looking at here is regarding Twitter. It asks you for the number of retweets, what your post included, your hashtag information, and language. And just a reminder, it's due on the 15th of the month. Okay, very quickly, here are some basic campaign or basic Twitter metrics. And I just wanted to orient everyone by taking a look at these. There are other metrics, but these really are the basics. They're pretty self-explanatory. The follower growth, that's the number of new followers that you get every day, week, or month. Your follower quality and engagement is the number of users that interact with your account, and that's retweets, replies, that type of thing. Your reach is the number of users that favorite or retweet your tweets. And your traffic is the number of users that go to your website. Okay. Now, there's been a lot of hype and excitement about Twitter's new analytics, and it's official. Its name is Twitter Analytics. Before Twitter unveiled it in mid-June, you had to use third-party or non-Twitter applications to give you metrics information. I first found out about it as I was preparing the first webinar in this series back in August. But now, as I prepared this Twitter webinar, I've gone back to some of the same online information, and it's been updated saying that they aren't sure exactly who has access to Twitter's internal analytics, and they believe it's slowly being rolled out to users. And there doesn't seem to be much logic to who has access and who doesn't. You also need to know that some users have had access to it, then they don't, then it reappears on their pages again, but it disappears for others, and then it's gone. And that's what happened to me. I had it back in August, and now I don't. So please be aware of that. But still, I'm going to mention some other options to measure your Twitter performance if you want to get started right away. But do check your Twitter page periodically for your access to Twitter Analytics. Now, I'm going to assume that you have access to it or you will soon. So let's find it on your page and see how to use it. Okay, you log into your Twitter account and you select Twitter ads from the drop-down menu. You will then have to sign in again with your Twitter account name, username, and address. I'm not sure why you have to do that a second time, but you do. All right, if you have access to it, it will look something like this after you sign in. The first thing you'll see is this ad screen. You can ignore this and just go up here where this green circle is and select Analytics by clicking on it from the drop-down menu. If you have access, selecting Analytics will take you right to your metric information. And if you don't have access, you'll just get this ad screen and you will not see the word Analytics here. That's what happened to me. I kept looking for the Analytics and it just was gone on my Twitter account. Okay, Twitter's Analytics provides 3 metrics. A timeline activity graph that shows mentions, follows, and unfollows over time. The post-level information, meaning what happened to your tweet after you sent it out, and that includes number of clicks to links, number of favorites, number of retweets, and number of replies. It also includes follower information, including a follower growth chart, gender breakdown, follower location, and interest. And also included is your followers also follow breakdown on the right-hand side. And we're going to look at all of these so you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now let's look at the first one, the timeline activity graph. Okay, when you have access to Twitter and you go into your analytics, you will see your timeline activity graph. You don't have to do anything to produce this. Twitter does it automatically for you. And here, your timeline activity graph shows your mentions, your follows, and your unfollows over time. Here in this particular case, this person had 2 mentions. They had 24 follows and 20 unfollows. See, and this is really great because you don't even have to read these lines here. It's just written it right out for you. And of course, down here, it gives you the time frame. This particular graph shows you by date what's happening in terms of how often others mentioned you, how many followers you have, and if anybody decided to unfollow you. Below that, you would have a listing of your tweets and how they have done. You don't see it right here because I can't show you everything on my screen, but let's move on to the next portion of it and you can see. Okay, so here are your tweets. The post-level information, or in other words, what happens to your tweet after you tweet out, includes the number of clicks to links, your number of favorites, your number of retweets, and your number of replies. And all of those are shown here. Your number of clicks are shown right over here. If you look to the recent tweet section of the timeline activity, you'll see little click counts beside any tweet with a link to it. This is a little hidden, but probably one of the more valuable pieces of data inside of Twitter Analytics. So here, it tells you which ones received the most clicks. This one here that I'm pointing to had 7 clicks. Also under, let me see here, also under recent tweets is a show section that lets you sort by best, good, or all. For example, you can click on best to show your top 15% most engaging tweets. Twitter ranks these by showing messages that got above average favorites, retweets, or replies. Your timestamp down here can give you some information as to the best time to tweet on when posts are getting the most clicks. My understanding of the timestamp is that Twitter does not provide you a graph that shows you very easily when the time frame is for your best, for the most number of clicks. So that's something that you have to do by basically looking at this particular area here. And if you can identify what got the most number of clicks, it might be helpful then to look at your timestamp. And remember, this is in Pacific time. And my understanding is that you do not have the option to set your time frame. So you're going to have, if you're not in Pacific time, you're going to have to calculate, you know, what this really means to you if you're on the East Coast or on Central Standard Time. Okay, now we're taking a look at the next piece of Twitter Analytics, your followers. Your follower information includes a follower growth chart, which is this. It shows you your growth over time. It gives you a gender breakdown as well, and your follower location and their interests. And you're also shown here, your followers also follow. So if you're trying to figure out who to follow, you might want to see if you've got a very good follower that seems to be very interested in the types of information that you're tweeting out. You might want to see who's following them, and that might be able, that might give you a clue as to who else you can follow. And as I mentioned too, here's your gender information. So those are your 3 basic charts, and that basically covers your Twitter Analytics. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward, even though it is a little hard to find at this point in time. There are other sources of Twitter metrics. If you use bit.ly, the URL shortening service, this tracks the number of clicks on links. So this might be able to give you an idea of how many clicks you're getting on your links. Clout is a service that grades your Twitter influence from 1 to 100. It's an interesting source of information because basically what it does is it identifies the people that are most influential on Twitter and also other social media sites, and then businesses use that information to figure out how to target their social media efforts. Hootsuite. This provides several analytic reports, and it helps you do a lot of different things. One of the things it does is it helps you schedule your tweets so that you don't have to do it in real time. You can schedule them for over the weekend if you want information to go out. It provides you some analytic reports, and of course there's a free version and a paid version. And then Twitonomy, similar to Hootsuite in that it gives you some analytic reports, and there are free and paid versions. All right, we're winding down here. I just wanted to walk you through the resources pages. You've got Twitter for Nonprofits. It gives you some ideas of how nonprofits can use Twitter. There's a complete guide to Twitter that gives you more information in a very easy to understand format. There's also two Twitter glossaries that I've included here, 2 links to Twitter glossaries to help you. Some of them have better explanations than others, so I've given you more than one. Okay, if replies and mentions are still confusing to you, there are 2 links here that will give you some background or more information on how to understand them. But basically, remember, it's the location that makes all of the difference. If you're brand new to Twitter, there's a cheat sheet that you can download and print, and you can have that by your side and figure out how to use Twitter. All right, to find out if a hashtag is taken, you can go to hashtags.org and just type it in and figure out if your hashtag is in use already. And then if you're still wondering about hashtags, there are, or here is a link that will give you more information. All right, some more resources here. If you want to add a cover photo, if you want to add a background, and if you want to know more about URL shorteners, this is the page, the resource page that gives you that information and the links that will take you there. Twitter Analytics. Okay. Even though you may not have access to it, you may want to look into Twitter Analytics. All of these give you a sense of how the Twitter Analytics work, and it will also give you actual Twitter analytics pages that you can look at, much like what I showed you earlier. All right, well, that concludes my presentation, and I hope that NALCAB has helped support you in your use of Twitter and to use it for the good work that you do in the communities that you serve. I encourage you to apply the suggestions we've made here today. It is definitely a process of trial and error, but that's how you will learn what works and what doesn't. So I want to thank you, and we're ready to take on any questions that you may have. Okay, the question is, what exactly is Hootsuite used for, and how necessary is it to use in conjunction with our Facebook and Twitter accounts? Well, it is very useful in that you're able to schedule all in one location when you post on Facebook, when you post on Twitter, and it allows you, it gives you its own internal analytics. So I know a lot of nonprofits use the free version of it. My suggestion to you would be to try it out, see if it offers you more advantages than the scheduling options that Facebook gives you. It definitely will give you an opportunity to schedule your tweets. So there's an advantage right there. Again, you know, it's free, so I would take a look at it and explore it and see what you think about it. People use it for the sake of convenience, and again, it also gives you some analytics. So in that sense, it would be very useful. Okay, the other question here is, for-profit companies often use contests and or giveaway campaigns to attract new followers. What example can you suggest for a nonprofit to use? Okay, well, that's a very good question. You're absolutely right. Contests are huge. In some of the nonprofit research that I've done, they have contests for pictures that capture what they do. You know, if your theme or if your mission involves homelessness, or perhaps you know, you work with senior citizens, you might want to have a contest that exemplifies, you know, your mission. So photography contests are big. The other thing that I have seen are complete phrases, you know, a fill-in-the-blank kinds of questions. Or not questions, but you know, let's say a nonprofit is trying to complete a particular message, and so they open it up to their followers. And that does a couple of things. It gets them engaged, but it also gives them a sense of, you know, what people are thinking about the nonprofit out there. So what I did not include in here, and there's quite a few resources for how nonprofits can do contests. What I'll do is I will pull several of those links together and send those out to you all. That's a very good question, and you know, I feel bad that I didn't cover contests because that is a big piece of what's happening on social media, but I will send those out to you because there is a lot written out there. All right, next question. Can you access hashtag mentions or see how many people use a specific hashtag? Wow, that is a very good question, and I'll be very honest with you. I don't know. Based on what I have seen, I don't think that you can.
Actually,
David's going to jump in here and help me.
yeah, actually in Twitter, you're able to search Twitter, and one of the things you can search for is a hashtag. So, for example, if you want to search for Olympic hashtags, you do pound in Olympics, and then enter, and you can see the different tweets that come up for the hashtag. I don't think you can see the specific number of users, but at least you can see the most recent conversations.
And you know, just as an example, this past weekend on Sunday, I was watching a very popular TV show that's coming to an end, and it was very exciting. And I wanted to see what people were tweeting, and so I went online as I was watching the TV show, and it seemed to me like there were hundreds upon hundreds. So it's not a very analytical way of categorizing the number, but you know, just by eyeballing it, you do get a sense of how much people are interacting, you know, with a particular hashtag. But again, as far as we know, there doesn't appear to be a number. Okay, the final question. Why are others' tweets not showing up in our direct feed? We currently have to search for these tweets. And what they're referring to is where they either mention us or reply to us.
Yeah, those tweets should show up under the Connect tab, but the direct feed, that's only things that people that you follow have said or that you have said yourself. But Connect would be where I would look for things like that.
And if you recall, the Connect button is up towards the top, and when you click on that, that shows you where you've been mentioned and where they have replied to you. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Again, I want to thank you so much. I appreciate the time that you've spent with us. I do hope that we have been helpful to you. We want you to stay connected with us, and just as a reminder, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and you can always take a look at our website. Thank you very much, and have a great day.